Hi, I'm Beth from Sew Country, and today's tutorial is for the Varietti. This is a cosmetic makeup pouch or any type of pouch. The designer is Backstitch and Baste. I'm using a fabric from Brittany from the Emporium. The Emporium has a pre-order that is going on right now that has this print as well as other Christmas, winter, holiday types of prints. The Emporium orders very limited retail, so if there is a print you like, you will have to order it because there's a big chance you won't get it because the retail does go really quickly. I'm using zipper pulls from Sew Majestic as well as my zipper tape. My thread is from Wizardry and my tag is from Heartwood and Hide. The Varietti pouch is full of different sizes. I think there's 3 or 4 different sizes, but it's also full of different options. Today I'm just sewing up the simplest, most basic version. I do plan on doing tutorials for the other versions as well, just because I love pouches and I'm trying to build up my inventory for the upcoming holiday season. I sell a lot of pouches at craft shows. The main things I do is I try to have these pouches like with candies or soaps or lotion so people can just grab them and go. It is a quick one-stop gift buying. They can just grab the gift and check that person off their list. If you do craft shows, pouches like this are perfect for your inventory. This is a cotton woven material from the Emporium. It feels though almost like a canvas. It's a very sturdy, it's soft, but it's very stable, it has great structure. I did interface all the pieces except for my little pull tabs will go on the end with a woven interfacing, a medium weight. That would be like an SF101. And then on the exterior main pieces, I did add a layer of Thermoland just for some extra structure. So let's go ahead and get started making this pattern. The first step in creating this pouch is going to be working on the zipper gussets. So I have my number 5 zipper and I have it cut longer than my zipper gusset panel pieces. And we are just going to make a basic zipper sandwich. I do not have my pulls attached yet. I always do them at the end just to make it a little bit easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my lining pieces. I'm going to have it right sides up. I'm going to take the zipper tape, place it on top, right sides up, matching at that top edge. I want to make sure I definitely have plenty of overhang, or if you have your zipper cut exactly, make sure it's even. Now I'm just going to base this in place with the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just to get it attached. You could use double-sided tape here if you prefer, or clips and just do the regular zipper sandwich to sew all at once. This step's not necessary. Now that I have the lining basted in place, I'm going to take one of my exterior panels. Since my print's directional, I got to decide which way I want it to go. And whenever I have it finished, I want it to be looking down. So that's the direction I want mine to go. Once I have that figured out, then I just flip it up so that I have these right sides together. I want to make sure that I not only match up that top edge, but also the side edges as well. I'm going to sew it with the seam allowance given the pattern, but basically I'm going to sew kind of close to the zipper teeth, or as close as I can get. After I have those sewn together, what I'll do is I'll just pull them so that they are wrong sides together. And the first thing I do is I like to baste this raw edge together, and then I come in and top stitch. I baste because then I feel like I can do an even pull on these materials so I can get a really nice top stitch. This is the way that first side looks from the exterior. This is the way it looks from the interior. Now, I want to point out that I am using all materials the same. I know a lot of people don't like that in my tutorials, but I am prepping for shows, and so this is more about what I can sell for the customer, so I will be using all the same materials in this. For me, I'm going to have the fleece, the pieces with the fleece be the exterior, and the pieces with just the SF101 be the lining, but honestly, it could be interchangeable because that fleece is just to provide some support. I'm going to go off camera and complete those same steps for these remaining zipper gusset pieces on the other side of the zipper. I'll also add the pulls whenever I have them all attached and trim up my zipper tape. I have the zipper gusset part finished, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on adding the sides to this panel. But before I do that, I want to add some pull tabs. These are optional, but I do feel like they help with the opening and the closing of the pouch. That's the real only purpose of them. So I just cut the pieces. You could use webbing, whatever you wanted there. I'm just going to top stitch down both sides, then fold it in half, and then baste it in place here at the end. After you have these tabs centered on the zipper and basted in place, if you're using them, we're going to go ahead and start adding the sides. Whenever you're attaching these, if your print's directional, of course, on this lining side, you want it to be going in the right direction. So I kind of orientate it that way, and then I flip it up. If you want, you can go ahead and baste that in place. I feel like since it's such a short distance, it won't be any problem to just add them both at the same time. I do the same thing with the exterior, make sure I have it orientated the way I want, then flip it up. And then I'm just going to use the seam allowance given the pattern to sew across here, making sure, of course, I backstitch when I start and stop. After I get these sewn together, I'm going to pull them wrong sides together and go ahead and top stitch. I'm just top stitching that edge where I just sewed, and just about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam. But on this piece, we also have to attach a bottom piece. So I'm going to go ahead and baste all around this piece to have it kind of secure and all one piece at this point. This is the way that side piece will look once it's completed. Here it is from the lining side. I'm going to go ahead and complete those same steps for the other side and the other two side pieces. Now that we have the sides sewn on, we're going to add the bottom piece. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that my bottom piece may look a little different than yours because I had messed up my printing. I did do a dry test run to make sure my gusset fits, and it looks like it's going to fit great, but I had to make some adjustments to get it to fit great. So my bottom pieces are a little bit different, but you will have two bottom pieces. You will have the exterior and the lining. I did decide to go ahead and add fleece, a layer of thermalin on the bottom of both of mine just to give that base just a little more solidity, but you don't have to do that. It was just something I did. If your print's directional, figure out which way you want it to go. I want mine to kind of continue on, so I have that print going this way. Going to flip it right sides together with the exterior, and then I'll turn it over and do that same thing with my lining print to get it attached to. We are going to sew this with the seam allowance given the pattern, back stitching when we start and stop. Then what I'm going to do after I sew this, I will flip them wrong sides together and just top stitch that seam that we just sewed. I won't baste around like I did with the sides. I'll just top stitch the edge I sewed. Now that you have the base attached to the first side, we need to attach, of course, to the other side. This is that step where you'll have the exteriors together, so I'm just pulling that exterior together, but then I also have to attach this side of the lining with this side of the lining. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to baste the exteriors together. That will allow me to be able to kind of shift around without having to worry about the exterior shifting whenever I'm trying to attach the lining. So I'm just doing that basting stitch about 1/8 of an inch away. Several ways you can do the attaching of this bottom piece. You can roll it up really tight like a burrito, but I really don't do that. I kind of roll it just a little so that I can flip this around, and then I push that out of the way so that I can connect the two. I'm putting the lining with the lining. Now it's going to be a little awkward because it's a tight fit, and mine's even tighter because I had to adjust that bottom piece. Since my piece was just a little bit, it's a little bit tighter than yours will be. Yours won't be as snug as mine because your bottom base piece will be a little bit bigger. But I'm just going to kind of clip this in place. And then I'm going to sew with that full seam allowance, making sure these pieces stay lined up. Mine will be a little bit tricky, but it's the same process of how you did the exterior, just making sure everything lines up and sewing with that full seam allowance. Once you get both sides of the bottom attached, go ahead and top stitch the other edge you just sewed and baste around here, and then that completes your gusset. Now my gusset is finished, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the center marks on both sides of this gusset panel to get it ready to attach to the main panels. But before I do, I'm going to pull out those main panels. Before we add the gusset to these main panels, I'm going to pull out an exterior and a lining. If you wanted to do one of the various options, you would definitely make sure that you did that before this step. So if you want to put a pocket on here or anything like that, do that first. I'm just keeping mine simple. So this is going to be my back piece, and I have my tag attached. This is going to be one of my lining pieces. And I am just going to place these wrong sides together and baste around. After I do this step, I will repeat it with the front pieces, and then I'll mark the bottom center and top center just to help me with attaching that gusset. When I'm basting this, it's just going to be 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Now that I have this basted together, my exterior and my lining, what I want to do is I want to use those center marks on the gusset and these panels to start matching the gusset together. I'll place them right sides together and begin clipping around. The pattern does tell us that we're going to make a small snip in the gusset where it meets the corner, so I'll show you that. But basically when I come back, I'll have it all clipped together and then just talk a little bit about it before we start sewing it. I have my gusset clipped on. We're looking here at the exterior, so I have exteriors right sides together. Let's flip it over and look at the lining side. So you can see this is the lining and this is the lining of the gusset. When we come down here to the bottom, you can see what I have going on here. I have quite a bit of overhang. Now, like I said, I did print mine wrong, so the actual pattern probably wouldn't have that much. But in case yours does, or in case you're working on another pattern, what you can do is you can easily trim this off. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of cut this as a square so it kind of folds onto itself, and that way I can still keep that really nice 90-degree angle. What the pattern tells us to do is, if yours would be fitting perfectly, is you just make a tiny snip here in the gusset within the seam allowance. You don't want to go too far, so that it can kind of spread and help you get that 90-degree angle. But since I have overhang, I know I can cut a square here and get that resolved so that it kind of folds onto itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few of those clips out, and I'm actually just going to snip a tiny square in here. There's another pattern, I think it's Hollow Bag Creations, Nikki does this. I'm pretty sure that's where I learned that technique, and once I did it on one of her patterns, I was like, I really like the way that does. When you cut that out, you can push it in there, and if I cut my square big enough for the overhang I had, it should just fold on top of itself. You can see I probably could cut a little bit more. Let's make that a little bit bigger. And so now you can see it almost perfectly closes up in there. I'll have just a small bump. I could probably cut off just a shade more. It's not an exact size because mine wasn't exact there. And now that's pretty perfect to where it can just fit in, and I can sew over that and get that perfect 90-degree angle without too much bulk there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to baste around. The first time I do sewing with a bag like this with a gusset, I always do the basting first, and then I come in with the full seam allowance with my binding. When I'm sewing this, I'm going to start with this bottom first. I'm just going to go from one edge to the other across the bottom, and then I will come in and do the rest of the curve. That just makes sure that I lock in that straight section there. Making sure that everything's staying lined up. The gusset and the main panel are staying lined up, I mean. Now that I have that bottom secured, I'm just going to go all the way around with that same basting stitch around the curve, and then I'll come back in with my bonding. So this is how it looks just basted. You can see my corners are closed. There's no gapping there. I'm going to go and grab some binding. I've really been enjoying binding with ribbons. I'm going to grab that out, wrap it around, and then I'll sew that with the full seam allowance. Like I said, I've really been enjoying using ribbon for binding. The reason why is it has the finished edge, so I don't have to worry about folding or anything, but unlike waterproof canvas, it is so soft and thin that it doesn't give me any issues on a domestic machine with bulk or anything like that. So the way I do it is I just start on one edge, and if it's fraying, you can trim it off. But the way I start doing it is I just start. I don't do anything with that raw edge. I just leave it alone. And I kind of fold it in half, trying to make sure that it's even, and I clip it all the way around. Whenever I come to the edge to finish it, I fold that edge under so it'll be a finished edge, and I'll just overlap it a little bit. When I come to this edge, I push my finger in there and kind of let that be just a little bit of a crease, because I want to keep that 90-degree angle, and I want to kind of trigger my mind to stop and pivot here so that I keep that crease instead of sewing it kind of at a curve. I want to make sure I get a good sharp 90-degree turn there. So now I'm at the point where I'm going to overlap these pieces. All I do is I simply fold that under and then just make sure I line it up. Nothing tricky there. I usually start sewing right here where the overlap is, so I can go ahead and take care of that spot. If I was using something that was stretchy like a bias binding, I wouldn't start here. I would start here so that any kind of stretch would be able to be kind of fit in with this fold. But since this ribbon doesn't stretch, I don't have to worry about that. Now what I do is I just come around and sew it with that full seam allowance, and then I'll repeat those same steps for the other side, and we'll turn it and look at it. My first row of binding is done. I'm going to complete those same steps to attach the back, and then we will look at everything and check out the finished bag. I have both sides bound. I have everything completed. We just have to turn this out. If there's any shaping that needs to be done, I can do that. But let's see how this looks. I definitely need to put some clips in to push out these seams, but everything looks so cute. It's such a cute little pattern. It's so firm and stable with that extra stabilizer, and I just love the way this looks. I think this is going to be a great addition to my craft shows for Christmas. It opens, let's just look and see how wide it opens and how that inside looks. Just adorable. This could be the perfect gift. If you just want to give the pouch as a gift, that's fine, but also putting in some soaps or lotions, candies, whatever, mittens, socks. It's just a really fun little bag that can be reused for toiletries or for storage, and I love the way it looks. So whenever I talk about kind of pushing out these corners, the way I do that is I open it up, and from the inside, I just use my fingers to roll out those seams, and then I just put a clip there. I will leave the clips, and I'll do this all the way around just to kind of help compress and to get everything to lay the way I want it to lay and go all around the bag this way. I get these clips off Amazon, and I love them because they have that rubber on the bottom so it doesn't leave any creases, and they are so big that they can easily grab onto anything without breaking. So just a really good way to kind of help shape a bag. So this pattern is the Varietti. It does come in different sizes. It does come with different options. Like I said, I will be doing some of the other options later on the channel. My zipper tape and the zipper pulls are from So Majestic. This print is from the Emporium. This is on pre-order right now. It closes maybe around the 10th, I'm not for sure, but I'll put a link to her Facebook group and the website so you can kind of follow to see when it closes. I'll probably be doing another tutorial with one of her other prints because I bought several of them. Such a cute print, so fun, and it's great for the holidays. So I want to thank you for watching another tutorial of mine. I'll have the link for the fabrics and for the pattern in my description. And I hope today in your sewing room that you are able to just take the time to sew a fun, festive gift for someone you love, or to sew up some things for a craft show that maybe could bring you in some extra money. Thanks so much for watching and have a wonderful day.